So good morning and welcome to the Attest Brand Intelligence Workshop. Just hearing that there may be some travel disruption, so hopefully everyone's made it here on time. Thank you for those who've made it and can join us. My name is Mark Walker. I'm the Marketing Director here at Attest. And today we're going to talk a bit about brand intelligence, which is our word for kind of brand health tracking 2.0. So a little bit about Attest, briefly. We're on a mission to ensure that all companies can put consumers at the heart of their decision making. We're used by a couple of hundred or so brands at the moment to do just that. We have a big audience, around 100 million consumers across 80 different countries. Essentially what we allow people to do is get the insight and feedback they need very rapidly, in a more agile way than traditional market research would have allowed. These are some of the brands that we currently work with. So we work with smaller startups as well as fast-growing scale-ups, and then on the enterprise side of things, people with big international reach and hundreds of millions of customers themselves, as well as agencies for their clients. So it'd be good to get a little intro to the room and just a bit about what you do, the major challenge or opportunity that kind of sparked your interest in this workshop, and anything particular that you'd like to take away from it.
Yes, I'm a strategist. I work across, I specialise in social media, but not really so much anymore. It's becoming like more brand strategy now, because there's two of the same. And we are kind of, we're in main thunder, but we're really looking at all our reporting and how we track clients and kind of trying to make a more holistic approach across all of them, because even though they're kind of very different clients, effectively we're noticing like real big patterns and behaviours, like where they all kind of have the same problem. Lost their market share, need to go for a younger audience. It's all kind of repositioning work we're doing a lot more of at the moment, and that's when we started using Attest. I think it might have been for Havana Club, because they were very like Cuban vibes. Yeah. And that was really resonating in Europe. So then they were like, I know, let's go for street culture. And we're like, well, okay. So we, classic, that's our most common brief. And they wanted to just test the waters and see if that kind of culture was kind of a good idea, basically. And it turns out it was a good idea, so thanks Attest for let them do their thing. But yeah, so that's kind of our main challenge, and also improving our worth across longer periods of time. So not being so tactical, and actually proving like getting clients to part with bigger sums of money to do longer term projects.
Yeah.
I think it's our biggest challenge.
And in terms of clients losing market share, who are they losing to? Is it income, like new? Is it new innovative?
Probably quite a lot of things, like the top scale ups that you mentioned there. Like, I think they're quite. Our kind of whole proposition is a little bit different to kind of other agencies. We do a lot of kind of, our whole thing is we make Thai brands famous again, so people do tend to come to us when they're a bit like, not necessarily losing market share, but are a bit like, we just, that's what we're doing. Yeah. And like, we are kind of, we don't want our audience, we want this audience, we don't know what to do, because they're only buying like winter, we need to be more fashion, all that kind of stuff. And so they come to us either for repositioning or a new brand strategy or a new audience identification, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of it works really well to our position. But they're quite often losing to kind of the more agile brands, because they are like behemoths. Like I know Ricard is like, it's like red tape central. Yeah. It's so bloody hard to get anything through. So we're trying to make stuff easier by bringing people like guys like you in to kind of be like, look what you can do if you're just more agile and more flexible, and you can like move things a lot quicker, and you can actually be first to market and stuff like that. So baby steps. It's got a big challenge.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, big uphill, but worth it.
Yeah, I think so. It's nice to see the benefits. So I think it's kind of small wins, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting. So we set brand intelligence within this overall framework of looking at a brand's future. So if we just kind of quickly run through each of the segments. So firstly, you obviously need to learn and understand about your audience and your market. So some of those common frameworks are things like jobs to be done, which is understanding why people hire your brand or your service to do a particular job. So rather than thinking about your audience in terms of demographics and age and location, etc., you think you more specifically hone in on the very particular reasons why they hire you above and beyond competition, which is a really interesting theory that's from Clayton Christensen, who's a Harvard Business School professor. And there's some great videos on YouTube that like explain the theory if you've not come across it before. But it's really powerful. Quite a lot of our clients come to us having sort of thought about jobs to be done, and they want to validate it at a larger scale. And then, of course, there's market mapping, understanding your audience, audience segmentation, and then also some people use us live in workshops, almost a bit like this, where they might bring their team and their clients and have a bunch of different hypotheses, test them live, get the results back in real time, and then sort of if you started it in the morning, then by the time you get to lunchtime, you've got a complete data set to then talk through. So it's a little bit more evidence-based.
And like segmentation as well, is something we do a lot of, and quite a lot at the moment. I wouldn't say it's scientific. It's quite like me and my director sat there being like, we think this audience does it. But it's like, I've not heard of it being used for that before.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know whether it's the time of the year or what, but something's in the air, and lots and lots and lots of people are coming to us with segmentation work at the moment. So
yeah, and like attitudinal segments, because I think that's what we want attitudinal segments. Literally like my attitude to that segment is like not really, it's like not scientific at all.
Yeah.
And I think I'm like, but now increasingly like clients are like, where have you got this data from? I'm like, well, it was a hunch, and it'd be nice to validate my hunch, which is normally correct. So
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, we can just prove it for you.
Perfect. That's what I need.
And then of course you validate. So once you've taken that base understanding of your audience and your segmentations, you can run creative testing against them, new product development ideas against those particular segments. You can start looking at market sizing, and then messaging, proposition development, packaging, like all sorts of things. So once you've got that base understanding, you'll start with smaller sample sizes but have more qualitative feedback. Then you'll start to expand the sample size and go for more quantitative feedback to make sure it's statistically robust. It's a tough one to say. And then once you've got your segments and you've got a good understanding about your creatives and your proposition, we can help you understand where to go and find that audience as well. So, what TV programs are they watching, what radio, what podcasts are they listening to, even kind of what is their, like, does your segment over-index on a particular form of transport? Are they more likely to drive to work? So you should be targeting them on radio and podcasts. Are they more likely to walk to work? Like things like that. So we can start to uncover really interesting insights about where your targeting would work best. And something that we're talking a lot about at the moment is dynamic media planning. So out of home, TV, they all allow this more dynamic approach to buying their space now, which is sometimes micro moments, often within 24 hours, even sooner. You can just buy the right placement against the right TV ad. So if you're approaching it rather than a 12-month, here's our media plan, but actually...
Yeah, especially with the brands we work with, quite a lot of them. One of them is a protein shake, but they're like smaller, and they're literally like, we're buying all our media space, like, I don't know what they call it. It's not on the black market, but it's like I don't know what they call it, where they basically get the leftovers.
Sure,
but we were like, that would be quite cool to be like, hey, that's how you have to work, but we have to turn it around really quickly and be like, well, you can still make it quite dynamic.
Very cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then finally, while we're here, measuring. Doing pre and post campaign testing. So focusing on specific campaigns, broader brand intelligence. So over time, is your brand growing or decreasing in all sorts of different measures, which we'll dive into. Also looking at competitors, and then also looking at overall category and market growth declining. Are new things come in to the market that we should be spotting earlier than our competitors, and is that wise to invest in early because it's going to grow overall? So brand intelligence sits within this overall framework, and hopefully what you get out of brand intelligence isn't just a quant figure, but you actually start to learn more, and it goes full circle again. So here's a few stats on why you would want to track your brand. These are probably great to share with clients if they're skeptical.
Copy and pasting these.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be sharing these. So top 100 brands growing rapidly in value. So once you have that breakout brand, it's a defensible asset, effectively, and it's something that if you continue to invest in, the returns will be great. Meaningful brands outperform the stock market by 206%, according to Havas. Strong brands outperform the market by 73%, according to McKinsey. Brand Finance, I think it's 100% return over S&P average. So lots and lots of different sources.
Even if 100% more successful me.
Exactly.
Can't argue with that.
And not just one, but 3 diverse points of view here, which is pretty good. So yeah, like lots and lots of evidence, lots of different methodologies, but all suggesting that if you invest in brand, it's going to help you both short and long term to drive performance and business performance. So it's not a vanity metric. It's actually something that drives sales and revenue and your listed stock price as well. So kind of a little bit of a definition around what do we mean by brand intelligence. Some people call it brand tracking, some people call it brand health or brand health tracking. So for us, brand intelligence is this slightly more strategic understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your brand in relation to your target consumers, key competitors. So really the 2 things to pull out of that is, one, your brand isn't in a silo. So it's really important to know whatever number you put on the brand strength, how is that doing relative to your competitors and to your overall market?
Yeah.
And then the second thing to pull out of that is it shouldn't just be a number, it should also be a qualitative understanding.
Yeah, we get asked that all the time, like competitive benchmarking, which I always find a bit of a shit question to be asked, because I'm a bit like there's too many variables to give them a meaningful answer. So maybe this is a meaningful answer. It's
tough, but this is one way to tackle that potentially. So some of the questions you might be answering through brand intelligence are, how well known is your brand amongst your target consumers, so segments that we might have defined, how well liked is it, do consumers associate your brand with the kind of values and benefits that you want them to, and are you ahead or behind your competitors on those important factors, and why? So having those actionable insights. So this is where we kind of dive into the meat of this, like what should go into a brand health tracker or study, and what doesn't. So these are the kind of 5 really core elements that we would include consistently every month, every quarter, however frequently you're tracking a particular brand. And again, I'll go on to how often you should be doing that a little bit later on. So the first thing is unprompted brand awareness, and this will often be pretty much the first question that goes into that. Hello.
Hi. Is this the
welcome brand tracking? Yes.
I was like, I'm gonna have to eat all this food myself. I was up for it, but we stuck at London Bridge.
Was that what's right?
Stuck at London Bridge, and everyone's stuck.
No,
everyone would work, I can't get to work.
Oh,
stuck at London Bridge.
I couldn't get in to the building.
Oh no, I was outside.
Well done. So you're just in time. I've done kind of some of the context around this, but we're just about to dive into what goes into a good brand health tracking survey. And you've got coffee, water.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So the first thing is unprompted brand awareness. So how much of your target audience can we call your brand? Sometimes it's also known as kind of brand recall or share of mind. They're just different words for the same thing, essentially. And what we tend to do is turn this into a percentage. So literally, if you're asking 1,000 people and 100 people can return your brand, then you're going to get 10% unprompted brand awareness score, effectively. And there's a couple of different ways you can run this. You can run it completely open-ended. So how many brands in this category can you recall? You might say, what's the first brand that you can recall? So you get an absolute number 1 number, or can be the top 3, etc. There's different reasons for doing that. We tend to, so we run a weekly brand health tracker for a number of different industries. We always go with the number 1, just because that is the top of mind. Like, it's the one that's winning and outcompeting everyone else. So it's a really definitive number, and it also means that you get a great diversity of brands as well, because out of those 1,000 people, you actually getting even getting up to 50, even getting up to 5% is pretty strong for most industries. So that's unprompted brand awareness. Then you've got prompted brand awareness, also brand recognition. So how much of your target audience recognize your brands? Often you can do that just through the name, but it might sometimes be the logo as well, or the packaging. And that's quite interesting. You can get quite different results depending on how you structure that. So if you're in an industry where it's a supermarket shelf, if it's kind of FMCG and you need to have great visual brand recognition, then you want to maybe optimize towards those visuals and have like 8 images of you and your competitors. Whereas if it's an industry, let's say it's more search dominated, so you want to be the first brand to people to be searching for, you want to do it based on your brand name, not on what you look like. So different considerations go into how you structure that question. But it's always obviously very telling to know where you fall in all your other competitive brands. And then you've got brand attitudes and perceptions. So this is often an open-ended question. And what do you associate with this particular brand? And you can have a matrix. So, kind of all the brands and your competitors across here, and then all the key attitudinal statements that you want down the left-hand side. And then see where you fall within that matrix. Or again, if you're more interested in just your brand rather than your brand and your competitors, you can just ask, thinking about this brand, what are the top 3 words that you would associate with this? And we tend to do it completely unprompted. So you're not leading people, because obviously if your particular brand that you're representing has 8 core value statements, and they're the only ones that you put in front of people, then you're just self-reinforcing and kind of almost marking your own homework in that respect. Whereas if you leave it totally open-ended, you might be surprised what people actually associate with your brand. And there's nothing wrong with having both. You just have to have the unprompted question first, so you're not leading people. And we often work with clients to do both as well, so they get the unprompted stuff, which is really valuable, but then they also get how well are they scoring within their particular attitudinal statements. Consideration and purchase intent. So consideration means within your category, if you have, again, you and your 7 other top competitors, you might ask, which of these would you pick off the shelf first, or which of these would you, be most interested in buying? So it's a relative rank score against your key competitors. And then your purchase intent is specifically for your brand. How likely are you to purchase this brand on your next visit to the store? And that's done on a Likert scale, so very likely, quite likely, neutral, etc. So they're 2 really particularly for brands with. If they have incomplete data sets from point of sale, purchase intent and consideration are amazing leading indicator for commercial success, and really powerful often we find with clients. And then product usage versus category usage. So again, does your target audience purchase in your category in a specific time period? How recently did they purchase? This is really like share of wallet, essentially. Again, reported data. It's not point of service, but point of sale, should I say? But it's a great indicator. And I'll talk a little bit about statistical significance and confidence levels. But as long as you've got a robust enough sample size and it's set up, it should be fairly accurate in terms of what people are buying. And again, it's how you phrase the question. So if you ask people what they bought last year, it's going to be very difficult. But if it's a relatively high frequency purchase and you ask people what they put in their shop last week, most people will be fairly accurate and know what they bought. So it depends on the category and how you set up the question, but it can be really, really robust data. And then these are the things that you may or may not have tracked every single month. I actually think NPS is something most people include in every brand tracker, but it doesn't have to be. So Net Promoter Score. Do you know Net Promoter Score? No. Okay, so Net Promoter Score is an indicator of brand strength in many respects, or loyalty. So the question is, how likely would you be to recommend our product or service to your friends or colleagues? So it's the same phrasing every single time. And then you have a score of 0 to 10. And essentially anyone that gives you a 9 or a 10 is a promoter. Anyone that's 0 to 6 is detractor, and 7 or 8 are neutrals. And what you do is you divide the number of promoters versus the number of detractors to get a percentage score. And it's used, there's actually a lot of specialist software providers for NPS. What it's often used to do is measure satisfaction on a website or customer service. After the call, you might be asked to rate this service call. And that's really, really useful because it gives you a sense of that specific interaction. How well are people doing on customer service or their web experience? So typically with that type of NPS, it's installed on your website and you get the feedback kind of instantly every time someone does that interaction. What it doesn't tell you is overall brand strength. So it's actually a really interesting measure to get NPS for your overall brand, like how satisfied are people with your brand experience? Because if you've just had that interaction, or you've just, I don't know, had your product delivered and you're unboxing it and you're really excited, you're going to give probably a pretty good NPS score. But once that's all died down and you've been using it for a few weeks, is it still good? Or so it's not better, but it provides another genuine point of reference for how well your brand's doing. So we find it's really popular. And again, if you have the NPS score followed by a question of why did you give this score, you start to get amazing positive feedback on where you could improve. Spontaneous and prompted awareness of campaigns. So again, if you're running specific campaigns, out of home, digital, whatever it is, you can always tack these onto the end of your brand trackers to get a sense of brand lift. Key campaign communication outtakes of brand. This is like message recall. Like, what do people remember about the campaign? Was it what you hoped they would do? Competitor activity. So if they're launching a campaign, what is it that's resonating? With a platform like a test, it's neutral, so you can test your competitors' campaigns just like you would your own, which is quite interesting. So if people panic, so you often get people panicking and I don't know, they've just had great coverage in campaign or the drum or marketing week, and they're like, oh my God, this is the best campaign ever. We need to respond. But actually, it might be resonating with those magazines in the industry, but is it resonating with consumers? They've not seen it at all, right? Yeah, it's one of Cannes Lions, but no one on the street sort of actually knows anything about it.
So guilty. But I can see campaigns everywhere, and when I talk to my friends on the industry, they're like,
what? Yeah.
The bubble is real, people.
It is real. So this helps puncture that bubble a little bit and calm people down potentially and say, okay, yes, it's got loads of accolades, but it's not really made any dent in your competitors. And so this is quite useful for getting that feedback to clients. Content marketing PR questions. So you can actually use it to put out PR on content as well. So for example, if you see your brand is now #1 over the course of 2018, that's a nice bit of PR or press that you can use. And then again, we mentioned right at the beginning, creative concepts and messaging can always be tapped on the end of these things as well. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Do any of these include any questions about relevance? How relevant? What's the question? So at the moment we use the CBI tracker, the Charity Brand Index one.
Okay.
I'm from Great Wall Street now, I'm from a charity, by the way. And yeah, there's a question on there about relevance. We're doing a whole campaign, and the main measure is relevance. So I was just wondering if that comes into any of that.
That's interesting. We haven't had that come up at all, to my knowledge. So relevance to a person's life. Is that kind of what you mean?
How relevant is this cause to you?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
That relevant.
I see. Yeah. Maybe it's quite a charity.
Yeah, probably.
Thing. But there's no reason we couldn't include that in a. If that's what's important, it's just how we phrase the question, and you can still get a quant score for that. I mean, it sounds very much like a similar consideration purchase intent type question. Just with relevance, how relevant is this campaign or cause to you? Very likely, quite likely. As long as you're asking it consistently, it's going to be a useful metric. Yeah, that's interesting though. Yeah, and actually could work for your clients as well for relevancy.
Completely it's going to be like fashion and booze. Not quite as worthy, but still, relevancy is an issue.
Where are you from?
Here it's a design agency. So we do like booze, chocolate, and fashion.
Right.
But no, it's also but like bloody like pain in the ass to like try and track because it's quite quantitative, like especially with fashion stuff. It's like, do you like this? It might be they just don't like the stuff you make. So it's not really the brand necessarily. It's just the design or whatever. So it's subjective. So subjective. Yeah, it's so difficult to try and prove that we're doing a good job.
Okay, so just to sum up, so good brand tracker or brand intelligence should unlock the future, not visualize the past. So essentially what we're getting at here is there's lots of great analytics, Google Analytics, Tableau, Mixpanel, etc., but anything that's recording behavior that's happened is obviously naturally looking at the past. So brand tracking gives you a chance to think about the future a little bit more. So what would you consider purchasing? What would you think is the most relevant cause, etc. So you can have a slightly more future-looking lens with brand tracking or brand intelligence. Again, it should provide answers to your biggest questions. Is this resonating? Is it not? Are we winning? Are we not? Why? Uncovering new insights that you didn't explicitly ask. I'll cover this in the next few slides. Facilitate faster, confident decision making, and then adding context and really answering why. Like, there's nothing worse than getting a set of data and then going, this is really interesting, but why? And what can we do about it? And that's what we hope to avoid with good brand intelligence. It should provide context as well as just a number. So how do we turn these insights into action? So this is a fairly simple framework that we've developed in terms of looking at results and how do we apply them. So positive brand strength, negative brand strength, strong awareness, weak awareness. So you can make these numbers however you want them to. The way we do it is on brand strength, we combine NPS with sentiment. So is it positive or negative sentiment? How good is their NPS? And then purchase intent. So they're kind of the metrics that go into whether it's a positive or negative brand strength. And again, everything's relative. And then strong and weak awareness as well is literally unprompted brand recall. And then essentially we've got the core, more, explore, and ignore kind of segments. It's always nice to have things rhyming. It generally helps you remember them.
Yeah. It isn't in a box and it doesn't rhyme. We'll start to that.
Take it away.
Is it even a strategy?
Exactly. So we start with core, and sometimes this is counterintuitive to people because people like to tackle problems. But actually, you're going to get your best return on investment by going where you've already got momentum. So for every pound that you spend, if you spend it in areas where you already have pretty good awareness and positive brand score with your particular segment, actually you're going to probably get more back than trying to tackle your problem areas. So we tend to try and focus people on where you're doing well, understand why, and do more of it. And you're going to get a better return on investment. And so an example of this here is, you can't really see, so let me talk through the slide. So this is kind of one of our brand trackers that we do internally, so it's not privileged client information. So thinking about eating out, what's the first brand that comes to mind? And we see here that JD Wetherspoon's done pretty well. I know.
A classy segment. I like it.
Absolutely. I'm not averse to a JD Wetherspoon. It's good value. Exactly. So they've done pretty well with unprompted brand recall when thinking about eating out. So that's a kind of jobs to be done type statement, rather than like specifically asking which restaurant. Like, it's a slightly different way of phrasing it, but it orientates people more to, well, if I am going to be eating out, rather than thinking about restaurants. It's subtle, but it
kind of does guide you into a certain place.
It does.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then you can see up here, based on what you know about the brand you just named, how likely would you be to purchase from them. So they've got very high purchase intent, and then also a really strong NPS, lots of 10s up here. So I think it averages at 55%, which is pretty good for NPS. And then what we can do with the rest of the results is then start seeing, well, where are they doing well? So there's particular regions that they're really over-indexing, particular age groups. You can see there's kind of mid-20s to early 30s. It's like a graveyard, but then as people have families and they're looking for good value places that are kids friendly, which we got from the qualitative results. So what you can see from this, you start to see very quickly, is that that if we were working with Wetherspoons, they'd probably want to invest more money in these regions to keep up in their brand awareness, and the messaging around being good value, family-friendly place to go and take your kids for a Sunday roast or a Saturday lunchtime treat or whatever, could work really well for them. Like, that's their segment. They're doing really well. They've already got positive affiliations, so invest more in that area. Don't worry too much about the places like the southeast, etc., where they're not maybe as popular. And that's kind of it. That's how it really quickly and easily shakes out in terms of spotting these insights in the dashboard. And then another example, so more people really like the brand, it's resonating, there's maybe strong purchase intent, etc., but the awareness is low, again, relative to the rest of the category. So this doesn't work if nobody knows them at all, because you don't then get any score for brand strength. But if their awareness is, they have some awareness, but it's less than their competitors.
So like, they'd be like middle of the road, kind of.
Yeah.
Not top three in their category.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're not unknown, but their 3 or 4 key competitors are slightly ahead of them. You want to fan the flame, basically. They're getting something right. They've got a core audience, and they've got fans and advocates, etc. But they're not maybe struggling to go mainstream. So this was Molten Brown, and here we can see they've got really strong NPS, 70, really good purchase intent, and then a great positive sentiment. So quality, lovely, gorgeous. And why did you give them this score? We can just see, and sorry, this isn't in here, but Molten Brown themselves, they only got, what's that, 7, 8? I think they had 1% brand recall within this category. So
it's what your aunt buys you for Christmas.
Yeah.
Like what your aunt, you're right, you're the best. Why you like?
Yeah.
So what would the category be?
In this case, thinking about this was actually luxury brands. Yeah, and it's interesting.
Because they're weird like that. They're quite middle.
Yes, yeah. So it depends again how you define the category and the question. So in terms of a luxury brand, if we'd have asked cosmetics maybe or something slightly different, they might have scored better. But if they were defining their brand around being a luxury, and they'd know that they're doing well in terms of sentiment, but they need to up their awareness. So the fairly simple takeaway from here is within the segments that they're doing well, they need to invest more in media promotion to drive that awareness up, more brand level campaign spend. And then here you've got a classic. This might fit more with a lot of your clients, where a lot of people know who they are, but they're less resonant now, and they're losing their brand strength to competitors. So obviously, this is where you'd want to delve into why. Like, what is it that's not resonating? So this one's DFS. They've got, compared to the other two, you can see very likely to purchase is much, much lower. So it's kind of ambivalent on purchase intent. NPS was okay, but not fantastic. So this particular screenshot, I've dug into all those people who are neutral and detractors on an NPS side of things. Pulled out DFS, who scored very highly on brand awareness, but ambivalent everywhere else. And here, the reasons were really eroding brand trust around how many sales, like constant sales messaging. It just brings the value of the brand down a little bit by focusing constantly on the sale rather than the quality of the sofas, the workmanship, the craftsmanship, etc. So the takeaway here would be, yes, sales are important, but you need to do a bit more long-term brand building to balance that out and talk about the craftsmanship, and because they're all handmade, but a lot of people don't know that. They just think sale, Easter sale, bank holiday sale, blah, blah, blah. And that's what people are taking away from the brand. So the lessons here are, you've got great awareness, but you need to really balance the sales-driven messaging with the quality and to build that brand back up. And then sometimes strategy means saying no, right? So if you're 8th out of 8 in your category for awareness, and I haven't put, I'm not.
Yeah, and this brand.
I've left this one without any evidence. But sometimes you just have to give it up, right? And it's not about giving up a category; it's about giving up like a specific
So that'd be like a reposition job.
It could be.
Or is it for a new audience, or like you need to make radical change? Because
yeah, it's a bit of both. So if you had this element where you've got really poor relative brand recall, unprompted brand recall, so most brands people think of first before you, and even those who do know you don't particularly like you. If you can then that can quite easily be isolated though in the dashboard, and it might be that you see that it is urban millennials who it's just now. If strategically you're like, I don't care that we're losing, we're doing well everywhere else.
Like I suppose that could be a regional thing. Say like Harvester, for example.
Yeah.
Because we did something for them, and it's like urban areas for people are like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then like the rest of the country were like, we love Harvester.
Yeah. So for that, you might say, well, never mind about the like do more out in the country.
So then if you like to stand on it, then they're like, well, we want to go urban, and you're like, no.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
So that it's really, if it's strategically important to them that they absolutely have to crack this segment, then fine. But you know there's going to be a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
If you're really looking for that ROI, then you might say just don't bother. Like. Just focus on your strengths and where you're doing very well, and you'll get a better ROI. So it's kind of ultimately it's down to the brand or the client and what they want to do. But from a purely financial point of view, you're generally better to genuinely ignore it. Like you might be better to actually just say, you know what? Fighting a fight and a fire that you.
It's so helpful.
Yeah.
This is what we're about to do. So voice money.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's really nice.
It's kind of like make the brand relevant to people all around the UK rather than just like London and South East. We've done focus groups in like Leicester and Bristol. And loads of people don't know that there's a charity associated with Greenwich Street anyway. And lots of people think that Greenwich Street is this posh place in London and they feel quite negatively towards it anyway. Why would I just give my money to my local charity? Yeah, kind of.
Well, quite.
Why not?
I mean, that's really interesting, but it may be wasted money rather than reinvesting where you'd see better return. And obviously having this data. Again, it doesn't. You can have all the data in the world if someone's mind's made up. Because for them, it's a strategic priority. It's going to happen anyway. But it at least gives you a fighting chance to say, this is crazy. Quite.
That guy in the meeting.
This is how we represent it each week. So Fashion Brand Index, so you can see all the top 10. You can see where they've moved up or moved down or stayed neutral. So this is a combined score over in the left, which literally combines unprompted brand awareness with the brand strength score to provide a kind of total brand equity number. And that obviously fluctuates. Sometimes people go up, go down, and then this is how it's broken down over here. So it's a nice visual representation. It's might be quite a good way to send it to clients. Oh no, go ahead.
Just thinking about it, because benchmarking, as I said, was something I asked all the time, and I never know whether, because especially because they are, because some of my clients are boots, and they often think that people that like Vans, Converse, like that, are their competitors, and I'm always a bit nervous about competing because the size difference is just so vast. And I think we're always just going to look shit.
Yes.
You know, and I'm just a bit like, I don't know ever whether should I be benchmarking against people that are kind of similar size, but that's sort of cheating, or
no.
Like, how do you slice it? Because I suppose that makes sense. Because then Nike's always going to be on top, surely.
Yeah, Nike dominates a lot.
Yeah,
so
then is it going to be data you're under?
So I'll tackle it now just because you've asked a question. So it depends on what you're trying to get out of. Again, what is their strategic objective? So if it is to be a full-on lifestyle brand, mainstream, globally, etc., then you have.
It probably is.
then you're going to have to accept that there will be a lot of bigger competitors who consistently outcompete them. You probably need a bigger sample size to make sure that you even get enough data on them that they feature on there. What I would suggest is that you try and narrow it down, at least for the first year or two, while you're going through the restructure. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. So if you're looking to try and re-energize the brand with a specific target audience, then there's two ways that I can be doing it. Firstly is you just run the brand tracker with that audience. So in this case, I think you said millennials again.
Yeah, they're called technically socially first females. You can imagine
Socially
they're
first
like
females.
Instagram famous chicks, you know, those
Yeah. Okay. So you could have a qualifying question around like how active are you on Instagram? Pre-select filters around age, location, etc. So you're already having a slightly more targeted audience than all of the UK. And then you might ask, rather than saying what's your favorite brand, you might ask what's the favorite new brand that you weren't aware of 6 months ago, 12 months ago. So you can so that immediately will start to cut out all the really big established competitors.
And I actually don't think their competitors are who they think they're either. Because I think completely what you said, like they're not ever going to compete. And actually that's not, Vans' objective isn't to become like a fashion forward brand. They're like a heritage brand.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. They're like, oh, we're always losing to Vans. And like, we're just so different. Like it's so hard to get them to shift there. Because actually they are like almost a challenger fashion brand. It's more likely to be that kind of vibe.
Yeah. So it might be again, it's worth probably starting with the segmentation. Like anyone who does own Uggs, why? Anyone who doesn't, why? What would motivate you to get them? What kind of attitudes, behaviours, need states would people have? And that would help you define your competitive environment to begin with before you even go for the brand tracking. Because
We should do a case study for them using this. I'd like, look. We need to talk about Vans and Converse.
Definitely. Well, I'll share the slides. You can talk them through it.
Yeah, they'll be well keen. I think like they are a bit like sick of feeling a bit rubbish, but like they're doing really well. But it's like it's hard to find a comparable segment for them because they're in a bit of a weird size, weird place. But we'll get there.
I mean, if you want us to talk to them with you, we could do that sort of together and tackle it together.
Just to be like, let's talk about this.
I mean, one brand that we spoke to, who will go unnamed, on the I told you so. From they literally just wanted this data to be able to blame each other for not performing.
Classic strategies, like you can get all the data to prove you wrong.
Yeah. So different motivations going into these things. And actually this was the next thing. So 3 main considerations when you're setting up brand tracking or brand intelligence. So the first one is frequency. So obviously the more frequently you run, the faster you spot trends. And again, it's very dependent on the industry. Some industries are very, very fast moving, have lots of new competitors coming in and out of the market, lots of campaign spend going into the market. So
you say like more dynamic, like sort of more startup-y brands you'd want to do it more often.
Yeah.
And then like the bigger, more kind of.
Yeah. So if you were a utility, British Gas and Electric, etc., then you don't need to be running this monthly.
Yeah, we just started working there for a train company.
Yeah. so for very, very slow moving, slow to switch industries, you might be able to get away with doing this a couple of times a year. Most, like the default is quarterly.
Yeah, that's what we tend to do.
But for really fast moving industries or things where there's lots of seasonality. So actually, I mean, electronics, like you've got Black Friday, you've got Christmas, you've got Easter. Like there's lots of sales driven opportunities. You might want to track your brand, if not monthly, every other month, because there's so much going on there. And these things change.
Kind of like low interest, but not so much because of utilities. So like we do FMCG as well, so like cereal bars and stuff. So it's like people are like chatting loads about them.
Yeah.
But they are it's like loads. That's the one where we have loads of challenger brand problems. It's like Naked coming in just like doing stuff. Yeah. But that's quite. So should we do that more often?
So I think
it's quite low interest.
I think if you if you're targeting quite a specific segment in quite a small niche where things will fluctuate quite a lot, then every other month possibly. But
yeah, and I think it's quite a wide. They're quite like it's Nature Valley, so quite like the everyman.
Okay.
Cereal bars.
Probably quarterly is fine, in all honesty. Yeah. And the one point that we make, so again, this attitude seems to be changing, but a couple of years ago when we'd speak to brands, they were kind of like, well, once a year, even once every other year, we'll do a big brand health study, and that's enough. But as we say, you can't spot a trend without 3 data points. So if you do it once a year, then it's going to be 3 years until you realise, our brand's lost relevance, and you can do anything about it.
Yeah, that's actually mad when you think about it, isn't it? Like, every year we get briefed on stuff from clients, and I'm like, that data is so old.
Yeah,
Why are you telling us this? It'll be like, vegan is a huge trend. I'm like, yeah, like 3 years ago.
Exactly. So having that at least quarterly means that within 3 quarters, which actually is still a fairly long time, you're going to start spotting a trend where, oh dear, our brand resonance is going down, or brand awareness is going up, which is great. So the more frequently you run it, but again, not every industry is going to have strong trends. So yeah, I would say quarterly by and large is fine.
Yeah.
Exceptional circumstances, once a month, once every other month. Sample size. So the larger the sample, the more data and segments you can work with. So this is, again, so if you run it to 2,000 people, then when you drill into smaller segments within that data, you're still going to have a robust sample size. Whereas if you did it to 300 people, obviously you're going to get very quickly down to like 10 people said this, and it's not enough data.
And do you set the number?
Yeah.
People just...
Yeah, that's it. So you literally say, I want 1,000 people of this age, like, so nationally representative, you break it down. We already have that as a template, so you just literally click, I want nat rep sample, and then we set the quotas. So you have 51% female, 49% male, X percentage from all these different regions across these different age bands, etc.
Can you say like, I only want to ask people with children?
Yes, you can. Yeah. So you can on the dashboard you can select by age of children, number of children, household income, as well as region. You can even select what pet they own. Like it's you can get really detailed in how you.
Literally, I was asking a question.
Yeah.
I've never really questioned it. I'm like, this is great.
No, I mean it's a really very pertinent question.
Yeah.
So we work with a couple of hundred different audience providers all across the world. So they range from like loyalty schemes through to forums, communities, game developers, and like in-app developers, as well as like general interest media sites, as well as traditional sample and panel providers. But it's really important that you have this kind of mixture of audiences to draw from.
I just wonder, otherwise it's just people that know what a test is.
Exactly.
And then is that type of person that probably probably in the bubble.
Well, that's right. So if you go with anyone that kind of owns their own panel, there is inherently going to be a sample bias in there.
Exactly.
So one of our competitors, they are specialists in political polling, right? But they also offer their services to brands, and they'll do brand tracking and those kind of things. But their sample are generally more interested than the general population in current affairs and more politically aware, but typically actually slightly better educated, which is good if that's who you want. But if you want mainstream nat rep, there is too much of a bias in there. And also they're signed up to that panel because they're interested in politics and current affairs. They're less interested in brands and commercial stuff. So the engagement is less.
Skews it automatically.
It skews it automatically. So essentially by drawing from all those different pools of audience, we have mixed incentives. So not everyone is incentivized in the same way. So some people will get gems, some people will get loyalty points, some people will get straight up cash, some people will not get anything at all, but if they're on a like high interest group, then they're doing it because they're like, if they see a relevant survey, they're just motivated because they want to have a say. Yeah, they do. Exactly.
Amazon commenters.
And ultimately, when it's all blended together, you end up with a more representative sample. So that's
some of the clients we kind of said about the service now, like it must be skewed if Because I think they think you have your own.
No.
Like,
I mean, we do have a smallish sample of our own, but that feeds into everything else. Yeah, it's roughly. I don't know what the percentage is, but we draw from all sources on all surveys. And then this was a question we just answered around industry scope. So if you want to be a big national brand, super mainstream from 18 to 64 or whatever to 80, then you need to go after everyone. But actually, if you specifically care about how your brand's indexing with just millennials or just boomers, just the grey pound, whatever it is, then you can go deeper into a smaller segment. So there's some of the considerations. They're different for every brand in every situation. This is where we've got a team wonderfully named ACE, the Test Centre of Excellence, who are all trained market researchers. They've worked at places like Ferrero and Tesco and Kantar, and so they help advise how to best set up these brand trackers. These are like really top line things around getting stakeholder buy-in. So one common objective. Ooh, wow, coming up to time, are we? Oh no, we're good. It's fine. No, we're all right. Okay, so stakeholder buy-in. So one common thing that we find is brands, everyone's moved towards performance marketing, right? Because it's so measurable and trackable, so SEO, Facebook, etc. And that's great, but then they neglect the brand and they don't even give the brand the time of day, which is crazy. So there's this article which is linked out so you'll be able to see it, but it's a bunch of different pieces of evidence that we've collected all around that proves that brand has a positive impact on performance marketing, right? So if you know and like a brand, you're 10 times more likely to click on it when you see it on Facebook, or if you have the top 3 search results in Google, if you know the number 3, you're still going to click on number 3, even though it's not number 1. So it really does have a very direct impact on performance marketing.
Yeah, but every day argument all the time.
This article that I've linked out to should help.
It's just budgets, isn't it? People just don't have the money, but they just don't. They're not receiving benefit for 4 years. I'm like, stop that. Like, I don't even have to struggle for 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, I'll add another article into this actually that I read, was it last week, by Mark Ritson, who's the one of the columnists for Marketing Week.
Oh, okay.
It's great value, but he was citing another big independent study that suggested the right blend of brand to performance is actually skewed towards brand at around 60-40.
Yeah.
Yes, I went to a presentation on this.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, what was it? It was quite like effectiveness. And 2 guys from Anthony.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, did a really good presentation. Yeah, 60-40.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So yeah, anyone that's stuffing 100% of their budget into performance and nothing on brand, obviously you're going to see an immediate uplift because you're putting so much money towards it, but the brand will trend downwards over time. And this is where we again end up working with a lot of clients because they've grown. This is on the scale up side. They grow to a certain size through Facebook alone, which is great. But then, well, few trends on Facebook. Right? One is less people are on it and active on it. I think they lost 3 million European users over the last couple of quarters. So people, it is declining. So you've got less people and they're less active, but more brands are putting their money in. So natural supply and demand, it's getting more expensive to reach the people that you want to reach and get the results that you want. So whereas it's historically been dirt cheap, it's starting to get more expensive. But also you just hit the point of diminishing returns when you literally can't spend more money on Facebook. You cannot spend any more. So clients then tend to come to us and go, okay, we've kind of hit our limit here. We now need to look at TV, out of home, radio, all the traditional advertising channels that you turn your nose up to begin. It really is. And actually TV advertising's gone up. It's the golden age of radio. Like more and more people listen to radio. It's getting more and more ad dollars. And if you think about investment on a CPM basis, which is cost per 1,000 impressions, it's cheap. It's as cheap as many digital channels. If you combine that with brand intelligence, you can start to track the impacts in a slightly more effective way. So by doing this, it sets up this future beyond Facebook, and it allows you to start thinking about where your marketing pounds should be spent. And obviously, you can't manage what you can't measure. Classic quote from Peter Drucker. But if you actually do buy into the importance of brand, you're not then tracking it regularly. Like, how do you expect to improve it? Helps you to shape strategy based on evidence. So again, if you want to move away from, well, the CMO woke up this morning and just knew that this was what they wanted to do, if it's a slightly more consensus-based, data-driven organisation, you need the data to make those decisions, and then helps you focus on the bigger picture as well. So that's some of the stakeholder buy-in arguments that we've seen kind of work. And when clients come to us, these are sort of the motivations. And I think that's it. Back to the. So this is how we kind of started. But brand intelligence is. I've highlighted the wrong thing on the final slide. But brand intelligence is set within this wider framework of understanding your audience. Once you understand them, validating other hypotheses like creative testing, product messaging, position, etc. Taking that and understanding how best to reach your audience. So going back to radio, TV, but not just broad channels, like specifically what programs are really popular with your audience, and not just everyone, and which radio channel, which radio, not station, but like which particular program are they listening to, etc., which podcasts, and then measuring that it's effective. So that's everything that we kind of have.
You don't have to say much. It's awesome.
No problem. What haven't I answered, or that you wanted to get?
I've been like interrupting the whole way through. And you're going to send this over to us.
I will send this. Yes, I will. And if you do, honestly, like, we do work side by side with agencies. So if you have any clients who
have, I don't know if it's like a membership or whatever, but I think we do have an account with you. So I think I'd be keen to do like a case study, maybe of ARG or someone, so we can kind of, because I think they're already sort of partway on their journey to like the 4 year.
Yeah.
But we haven't been measuring it, so who knows? That'd be quite interesting. I might be need to lean on you guys to like set up a proper tracker and stuff so we can improve.
No problem.
What we're doing. But yeah. And so who's the best person to be in touch with to sort of do that kind of stuff? Do you get an account manager? Or do you get
Yes. Yeah. So we've got the ACE team who are essentially like the account management team as well. So they're the experts, but they'll work with you to make sure everything's set up.
So they're the ones to talk to. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. And you got what you were looking for?
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Really, really interesting. Thank you very much.
Is brand tracking something that you've done already?
Yes. So we